Governor Phil Murphy wants to see nationwide rules regarding masks.
We need a national strategy, I think, right now, and masking has got to be at the core of that.
I think just like a lockdown, there should be a nationwide mandate that we all start doing it.
Face masks are now mandatory for any Texas counties with 20 or more cases.
Governor Newsom has just issued a statewide order requiring people to wear a face mask.
Today, Governor Wolf recommended that all Pennsylvanians wear a mask in public in an effort to control the spread of the virus.
Well, starting Friday, anytime you leave your house, you are going to need to wear a mask or some kind of face covering in the state of Washington.
The governor's executive order is pretty simple. When you're out in public, wear a mask or face a fine.
Yes, you can be punished. The first violation is simply a written or verbal warning. After that, you can be fined up to $250.
Wearing a face covering in public, now mandatory in 18 states. It's a requirement that's making some people very unhappy.
Are you going to allow the government to tell you you have to wear a mask?
In Alabama, an off-duty officer was seen body slamming a woman at a Walmart when she allegedly refused to wear a mask. In Michigan, the face mask rule at a Family Dollar store turned deadly. Police say a security guard was shot after getting into an argument with the customer.
We think it's going to be a virus that stalks the human race for quite a long time to come until we can all have a vaccine that will protect us.
Meaning that it's going to be here until we get a vaccine.
Life's not going to turn back the way it was until a vaccine. I think everyone seems to be in denial about that in Washington.
The next step will be producing the vaccines in a sufficient number to inoculate everyone or almost everyone. That is something that we are preparing already.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path.
Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1. Most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the real virus, but to shape the system.
As many of you know by now, there is a plan to reset our way of living. The globalist scumbags you've just seen have intentionally engineered this COVID crisis and are now trying to pose as the saviors of humanity by ushering in what they call the Great Reset. And it's coming under the guise of environmental sustainability as planned in the UN's Agenda 21, codified in 1992 during the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. And it details in the Global Biodiversity Assessment the regulation and control of all human activity, land, food, energy, information, everything under this massive power grab. And once these demons have bankrupted entire nations, including the US, through their draconian lockdowns based on faulty virus models, and depopulated the planet enough to manageable levels through their technocratic supremacy, the World Bank and IMF and other globalist scumbags and the institutions they run can finally take over and implement their international redevelopment strategy, which is a post-human dystopian world that means full spectrum dominance of every aspect of human life over the remaining population. And yes, this all ties into wearing a mask. The main objective is to push these medical requirements, restrictions, and lockdowns until the population is so broken, mentally, emotionally, physically, and especially economically, that when they do give you the way out of this medical martial law that they've engineered, the only way out will be a vaccine implant that wirelessly connects humans to an interconnected control grid system through ground towers and space satellites, so these control freaks can manufacture a race of cybernetic slave bots that have every aspect of their lives controlled under a 1984 Orwellian social control nightmare, a true prison planet. In order for them to carry out this agenda, they first had to engineer this COVID crisis, which many of you are aware by now is a complete hoax, because the virus was never isolated. So both the PCR test and the serological test that they're doing is a complete and total fraud and subject to wild inaccuracies. Part of this agenda is ensuring enough people subscribe to this hoax through manipulation of virus statistics using new probable case definitions, according to the CDC, where not only you are counted for having cold symptoms without even being tested, but also using their contact tracing program that uses rigged computer models to determine others you came into contact with are also counted as a COVID case without anyone even being tested. Again, to bolster up the numbers artificially. The biggest bombshell evidence to prove this is not a pandemic is looking at the CDC's own mortality rates in the US from this year compared to the last few years. And I've crunched those numbers myself by going into the CDC's weekly mortality rates from all causes. So because we're in July right now, the only mortality information I could get for 2020 was from the beginning week of January to the last entry in July. Then I compared those same time frames from January to July in 2019, for 2018, and for 2017. And here's what I found. And as you can see from the spreadsheet, there was only an increase of 2.66% of deaths from all causes from 2019 to 2020, which represents an increase of 41,168 deaths, and only 0.12% of the total population. But if you notice from 2017 to 2018, there was an increase of deaths of 1.92%, representing almost 30,000 deaths in that same time window. So there hasn't been a substantial increase in deaths overall at all for the last few years, which absolutely negates any notion of the US being in a pandemic massive death scenario. The main point now, and what is literally starting a civil war in this country, is the mandated masks, which is trying to be pushed on a national level. However, I've discovered some bombshell evidence that by the time anyone is done watching this video, no one, and I mean no one, on the right or left side of the political spectrum will ever want to wear a mask ever again. Part of this phase we're in is to mandate the masks across the board anywhere in public in an effort to see who is the most compliant and the best little obedient slave. And those who are not can be targeted for extermination. And they can do this by using existing biometric face scanning technology in their surveillance grids in every major metropolitan area that filters that information into a central database for analysis. Many of you already know by now that most of these masks are not fully capable of preventing transmission of the virus, or any virus for that matter. Many of you also know that the OSHA requirements in the workplace require that there be a certain level of oxygen to breathe, and these masks reduce that level of oxygen to dangerous levels. The narrative among the mask holes on the left is that, well, at least it blocks some droplets, and as we've heard this over and over and over again.
If you wear a mask, you protect others. If others wear masks, they protect you.
The purpose of these masks is to protect others from our germs.
And remember, that's for everyone else's protection, and it may be for your protection as well.
Wearing the mask is not only for others' protection, but when others wear them, it's for your protection. No matter how much evidence you provide these mask holes, this is always their default position. But here's one aspect of the masks that nobody is talking about, and it all started from one simple question. What are these masks made out of? First, I'll start with the regular cotton masks. Aside from the slew of toxic synthetic chemicals also required in the processing of conventional cotton, such as silicone waxes, petroleum, scours, softeners, heavy metals, flame retardants, ammonia, and formaldehyde, in which body heat and sweating actually accelerate the absorption of these residues into your skin. Cotton is also the most heavily saturated crop with pesticides. Now, it's common knowledge by now that most of these apparel companies outsource their labor to China, Bangladesh, or India. But what most people don't know is that China is actually the largest producer of cotton in the world, using 4 times more pesticides than the United States. Historically, about 1/3 of pesticides in China are used on cotton, and over 1.8 million tons of agricultural pesticides were used in China in 2016, and many of these are classified as extremely hazardous by the World Health Organization, contributing to 400 to 500 farmer deaths annually due to pesticide poisoning. So China accounts for 1/3 of the world's total amount of pesticide use. And it's an estimated 30 to 40% of all pesticides applied in China are used on cotton, making it the most heavily treated agricultural crop. Pesticide use is the prerequisite for the processing of uninfected cotton fibers, which pose a risk to the skin as well. The possibility of pesticides being insufficiently removed before the manufacturing of face masks means that your skin can absorb these chemicals and inhale them into your lungs when you wear a face mask, as well as the other toxic additives added to clothing. And the worst part is they can't be washed out because the toxicity is on a molecular level. So that'd be like trying to wash all the pesticides out of your food that it absorbed into it. You just can't. And all it takes is a few minutes to breathe those chemicals and pesticides in. And the people that have to work with one of these masks on every day for 40 hours a week are even more screwed. Now you have to remember, if two people are both wearing flimsy cotton masks, and the idea of both wearing the mask is to protect each other, cotton masks pretty much allow anything to pass right through the easiest. So these people look real stupid wearing these cotton face coverings that literally provide the least protection, but do provide a dangerous cocktail of toxins.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
Even if you remove all the pesticides and the other chemical additives in cotton masks, which would be impossible, they still offer no protection and are actually a breeding ground for moisture to collect, which not only reinfects yourself if you have a virus, but is a breeding ground for bacteria and provides less oxygen to your body, as many experiments have shown. So imagine, every time you breathe that hot air into that mask, you're breathing in all those pesticides and a whole host of other toxic chemicals. And let's not forget that 85% of tampons contain Monsanto's cancer-causing glyphosate, which is the pesticide used to saturate the genetically modified cotton crops. The famous surgical masks that's being pushed on all of us is just as bad as the cotton masks, or maybe even worse. As stated here, the material most commonly used to make them is polypropylene, but can also be made of polystyrene, polycarbonate, polyethylene, or polyester. Now, keep in mind, all of these descriptions of these polymers are speaking in terms of hard plastics, and even then they're harmful. But these surgical masks contain tiny polymer fibers that leach chemicals into your lungs every time you wear them. So if these hard plastics are bad for you, imagine what breathing in these same fibers are going to do to your body. But let's go over all the polymers used to make these wonderful surgical masks that are so cheap to buy. Polypropylene. While seemingly the most harmless, it's always referenced as a hard plastic, and the least harmless because of its inability to leach chemicals due to its high heat threshold. But again, you're breathing in these fibers, not drinking out of a plastic bottle, but this polymer has been shown to affect the nose, throat, and respiratory tract. And additionally, you'd never find a surgical mask strictly made from polypropylene without other chemicals mixed in with it or plastic additives. As mentioned here, polypropylene used in rugs can be hazardous when inhaled, and is a synthetic material that is constructed of different chemicals and materials that can be potentially toxic when placed within an indoor environment. Furthermore, polypropylene fabrics will allow for the moisture to completely pass through the polypropylene fabric entirely, so that includes your COVID-infested droplets from your mouth.
A safety video is going viral, showing how ineffective some can be as the nation struggles with a surgical mask shortage.
It's the safety video going viral. An Argentinian firefighter with a deodorant can, simulating a sneeze or cough. This demonstration showing most face masks are useless at trapping or blocking moisture.
And just like the rugs made with polypropylene, they do contain toxic byproducts that can be hazardous when inhaled to the human body. Volatile organic compounds are off-gassed from the material due to friction and sunlight exposure. So just like with the additives made with rugs containing polypropylene and those fibers being harmful, the same goes for your surgical masks. So it's all very harmful if inhaled. The next polymer in the construction of these surgical masks, polystyrene, or what people are more familiar with, styrofoam, can leach styrene, a suspected carcinogen, which is why Dunkin' Donuts shifted away from using styrofoam cups in their hot coffee. but I'm sure it's okay that you breathe your hot air into these masks and inhale the fibers. Next polymer in the construction of these masks, polycarbonate.